Hello, listener, wherever you are, live from the AB Plus studio of Radio Republik Indonesia. It is me, Rahma, and it would be so nice for me to present the special interview in the studio. And for today, on this special interview, we have a special guest from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Cuba, namely the Director General of Bilateral Affairs, namely Gerardo Penalver. So, Gerardo Penalver Portal, sorry. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, ¿y usted?
Did I pronounce it well?
Very well, very well.
It is a pleasure for us to have you here. So welcome to Indonesia and also Radio Republik Indonesia. Hope you're enjoying your time here.
Sure.
All right. Listeners, we would like to tell the listeners about the coming of Gerardo Penalver Portal as the Director General for Bilateral Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Cuba. So could you tell us the mission of your coming here in Indonesia, please?
Yes, good afternoon. Well, I came here on behalf of my Ministry of Foreign Affairs in order to carry out political consultations with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia. We have a long-lasting relationship. We established relations in 1960, and we have a tradition of exchange between our ministries of foreign affairs. We held talks about our political dialogue, about the possibility of strengthening our cooperation in different fields like trade, cooperation, development, investment, foreign investment, and scientific cooperation, agriculture, sports, health, and other fields.
And since when actually this coming was planned?
Well, we plan in our ministry. We plan political consultations with 1 year in advance because it has to be considered in our budget. In this case, I'm making a regional tour because coming from Cuba so far away from Indonesia, so we took this opportunity to visit other countries like India. I was already 2 days in New Delhi in political consultations, and I will fly this weekend to Japan, and after that I will participate leading my delegation to the 47th Forum of the Pacific Island in Micronesia, because Cuba is also a very important partner for the Pacific Island. We share common views and interests, and we are invited to this summit of the head of states and government.
And in this visit, why do you choose Indonesia?
Well, Indonesia is a historic partner for Cuba. We share common values and points of views in the international arena, in the international agenda. We cooperate in the international organizations. We are members of the non-aligned movements, and we are looking forward towards the next non-aligned movement summit in Isla Margarita in Venezuela in the coming weeks. Both countries, Cuba and Indonesia, are founding members of the non-aligned movement, and we both will participate at a high level in this summit, which is a very important consultation movement to exchange point of view and to defend the sovereignty and to defend the principles of the international law and to exchange points of view how to deepen and strengthening cooperation between the third world countries in order to build a better world, to fight against poverty, and to carry out different projects in the benefit of our people.
And in the meeting, in various fields that you told us before, what issues address the specific one?
Well, first of all, we think that we have a very good political dialogue, historic relations, but we think that we could have more trade, more cooperation, more investment, more visitors, more tourism. So we spoke with the different high officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we agreed that we should work together in order to strengthen our trade and our cooperation. For instance, we have a trade exchange in order of 25 million US dollars, and that it's very modest. We have opportunity to increase because there are a lot of products and technologies from Indonesia in which Cuba is interested, and on the other way, Cuba has different products, not only consumer goods and raw materials, but also high-tech products from biotechnology, from biopharma industry, that where Indonesia would like also to acquire. We spoke about cooperation in the fields of health, in the field of sports, in the cultural field. We spoke about possibility that Indonesian investors goes to Cuba. Cuba has many attractions for foreign investors, and we are trying to develop our economy, and it is important the participation of foreign investors in order to give an impulse to the Cuban infrastructure, to the Cuban economy. Indonesia has a great potential in this field of investment.
How about the vice versa? Like Cuban investors coming to Indonesia, as we know that Indonesian President Joko Widodo has instructed the application of the regulation that allows more and more investment from foreign investors.
Of course, we welcome the initiative of President Joko Widodo to include Cuba among the 169 countries benefit from this presidential regulation from last early March. And we are sure that the visa exemption agreement is going to be a positive step in the strengthening of bilateral relations. We have already a memorandum of understanding or agreement with Indonesia in different fields, like for example in agriculture, sports, culture, trade. And we think that the most important thing is not only the legal framework, but the practical results, and we are working in order to identify also possible areas in which Cuban business people can provide investments or trade or cooperation in Indonesia. We are strong in public health, in biotechnology, genetic engineering, also in biopharma industry, but also in education, in science, and in sport. We export nickel and different products, cigars, sugar. We could also have transfer of technology in the scientific field. There are a lot of potential in our bilateral relation that we haven't exploited yet, and we have both parties, Indonesia and Cuba. We have the political will to advance in this direction. We will organize in Cuba every November the Havana International Trade Fair, and we have invited the Indonesian businessmen on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce to participate in this trade fair and to identify possible fields of cooperation.
In November.
The first week of November.
Okay, looking forward for that then. And in this meeting, is there any MOU signing? If any, in what fields are they?
We have a good legal framework between the two countries. Now the most important thing is not to sign documents which has been already signed, but to fulfill this agreement and to carry out practical cooperation.
Okay. And you have mentioned relations about trade before. How do you see the quality of trade between Indonesia and Cuba?
Well, it's not balanced because we import a lot of products from Indonesia, and we haven't been able to make many export to Indonesia. So it's under the potential, but we think that we are in a way to turn this situation and to begin to identify possible products and sectors and technologies in order to increase our bilateral trade. On the other way, on the other hand, we have a tradition of cooperation in fields like public health. For example, in 2004, after the tsunami that hit the province of Aceh, a team of Cuban doctors came to Indonesia to help with their own medicine and equipment to the affected population. Also, a similar situation occurs in 2006 after the earthquake in Yogyakarta, when another brigade of Cuban doctors came to Indonesia with medicine and equipment to help the affected people. That means we have these historic ties not only at government level but between our people. We received in Cuba last year more than 4,000 Indonesian visitors. We want to encourage the tourism from Indonesia to Cuba. We have to work together to find new ways and to increase the connectivity, and we are sure that both countries will, although we are very distant from each other, we will find opportunities and discover chances to strengthen our bilateral relation.
Okay, and still talking about trade relations between Indonesia and Cuba that still involves the third parties like Panama, Mexico, and Spain. How about possibility for direct trade, and what do you think about its benefit?
You're right. We have discussed about this item with the high-ranking officials today in the foreign ministry, because we have the possibility of establishing direct ties without intermediaries. We can establish direct trade without using third parties, because that would make the operations more efficient and that would reduce the costs. We should work also to create a better banking framework. The relations between the banks from Cuba and Indonesia, we have to remove obstacles in order to make this banking relations more fluid. And because business people and enterprises, they need to be backed by a banking system that is functioning efficiently, and we're working in this direction.
Okay, and now we go to the bigger scope, the international relations, but of course it also has influence to Indonesia, which is relations between the United States and Cuba that have been re-established their diplomatic relations. Does it influence relations between Cuba and other countries, including Indonesia?
Of course, we have reestablished diplomatic relations with the United States last year in August. We have made progress in this sense. We have dialogue and cooperation in a dozen of fields with the U.S., like scientific field. Excuse me.
Yes, okay.
We have cooperation with the U.S. and dialogue in different fields, like climate change, environment, air transport. Excuse me.
Yes, okay.
The air conditioning in the planes.
Yes.
Well, mm, we have made progress in many fields in dialogue and cooperation, but of course, there are still pending aspects like the blockade. It's the most important obstacle to the normalization of the relations between the US and Cuba. So, the blockade, you know that the international community has supported the Cuban resolution for the lifting of the blockade in the United Nations. We have been presenting this resolution during 24 years, and we will present this fall in October. And the overwhelming international community, we are sure that they will support this resolution. And the second pending aspect is the devolution of the illegally occupied Guantanamo naval base to Cuba. Both blockade and Guantanamo are priorities in our bilateral agenda with the US. Without solving these two problems, it's difficult to make progress in the normalization. However, the Obama administration, they have made great effort trying to dismantle some aspects of the blockade, trying to create conditions within the Congress with the aim of lifting completely the blockade. President Obama visited Cuba in March, and but for example, he announced before visiting Cuba a new regulation in order to permit the Cuban citizens and companies to make transactions in US dollars. That was 6 months ago, and until now we haven't been able to make transactions in US dollars because one of the most difficult aspects of the blockade are the finance aspect. During the Obama administration, they have been fined banks, mostly European banks, with more than $14 billion for making business with Cuba.
Okay. And how about issue on embargo between US and Cuba?
Well, as I said, the what you call embargo is what we call the blockade. Is still there, although the Obama administration has taken some measures to dismantle some aspect of the blockade, but in general the blockade is still there, and it would be the lifting of the blockade. It is the main obstacle to the normalization of the relations with the United States.
And now we talk about health sector between Indonesia and Cuba. Like you said before, the aid in tsunami and also earthquake in Yogyakarta. It is of course one of beneficial cooperation between the two countries, and it has been running for years. Any new things offered in this cooperation by Cuba?
Well, Cuba offers the possibility also for foreign students to study medicine in Cuba. We have some Indonesian students in Cuba, but we would like, of course, to have more. We have granted scholarships, but there are different modalities to study in Cuba, not only medicine, but also another specialties, engineering, sports, and different branches. There is a possibility also to export our medical services. In fact, we have more than 40,000 doctors working in more than 70 countries. We could cooperate also in emergency situations. We could cooperate in the field of creating new medications, vaccines on the basis of biotechnology and genetic engineering. We could exchange views. Cuba is very advanced in the primary attention. Family doctors is a new experience. It's a experience that Cuba managed very well. Last week, for instance, we received the visit of the health secretary from Philippines. They went to Cuba to learn from this experience of primary health care and family doctors. The Ministry of Health of India is also visiting Cuba in a few weeks. That means we have a good relation in the health sector with the Asia Pacific region. Hundreds of medicine students from the Pacific Island have studied in Cuba. We have, for instance, we open a medicine faculty in East Timor, in Dili, where the Cuban professors they train Timor medicine students. We have made trilateral cooperation with Australia and with New Zealand regarding the training of the Pacific Island students and doctor. We have a tradition. We have a tradition of cooperating in the health care and the health system, and I think that Indonesia has proven that it is possible to establish cooperation in this field.
And soon, right after this visit, what is the upcoming cooperation that will be made with Indonesia?
Well, we hope that our economic, trade, and investment ties will increase, so as our political dialogue is today at the highest level. We hope also that we give more content to our relationship, and then Cuba Indonesia will have in the future more cooperation, more mutual investment, more trade, and the relations between our people can improve in many fields.
Okay, Mr. Gerardo Penalver Portal, thank you very much for sharing about this visit here to Jakarta, Indonesia. Or maybe any other cities that will you visit to besides Jakarta?
Unfortunately, I don't have time to visit other cities, but for the next time, sure, I will visit all other big cities in Indonesia, because Indonesia is not only Jakarta.
Sure, and not only Bali too.
Not only Bali. Thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak untuk menerima saya. Selamat sore.
Okay, should I reply something like the nada or what?
Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, gracias. Thank you very much. Alright, listeners, that's our interview with the Director General for Bilateral Affairs from Cuban Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Gerardo Penalver Portal. I'm Rahma. Thanks for listening.